So first I wanted to start by saying thank you all for joining us. Welcome to this webinar on how to contribute data to the EarthChem library. I will begin with a few introductory slides, and then we will get to a live demo of how to prepare your data and how to submit it. The EarthChem library is maintained by EarthChem, which is a partner in the Cite Data facility. EarthChem operates a suite of data systems that assist geoscientists with accessing, sharing, and using geochemical and other related data types. EarthChem develops and operates data systems, again, that help investigators share, find, and reuse data. EarthChem is supported by the National Science Foundation. And here you see the EarthChem homepage, which is www.earthchem.org. Everything that I'm going to be talking about today can be found at that website. My name is Megan Carter Orlando. I am the EarthChem Library Data Curator, so if you submit data or have questions about submitting data, you will likely be talking with me. I am joined here by Kirsten Leonard, Director of EarthChem and the AIDA Data Facility.
Hi, everybody.
If you have questions at any time, please type them into the question box, which you should see. There is also a way to raise your hand so that I can unmute you to ask a question, but I can't promise that I will notice that while I'm giving the presentation. We could perhaps do that at the end of the call. As I mentioned, EarthChem provides a number of data systems that aid investigators in sharing and accessing geochemical and related data. These systems are complementary, though they serve different functions. Geochemical, petrological, mineralogical, and other related data types, except for geochronological and thermochronological data, should be submitted to the EarthChem library. We will talk in more detail about how to do so. Geochronological data should first be contributed to the geochron system, and then with one click of a button, that data can also be published in the EarthChem library. So those are two of the primary mechanisms by which investigators can contribute data to EarthChem. You may have heard of PetDB. PetDB is a global synthesis of chemical, isotopic, and mineralogical data for rocks, minerals, and melt inclusions. Investigators cannot contribute data directly to PetDB currently, but by publishing data in the EarthChem library, you are putting it under consideration for inclusion in PetDB. A data manager will review your submission and determine whether it is appropriate to include. PetDB's current content focuses on data for igneous and metamorphic rocks from the ocean floor, specifically mid-ocean ridge basalts and abyssal peridotite, as well as xenolith samples from the Earth's mantle and lower crust. And this scope is growing. Much of PetDB's content is extracted by a data manager from thematically appropriate peer-reviewed publications, in addition to the user-contributed content that comes from the EarthChem library. The PetDB search interface allows access to data at a high level of granularity, at the level of individual samples or data points, whereas the EarthChem library search interface allows search and access only on the level of submitted files. Another system I would like to mention is the EarthChem portal. The EarthChem portal contains more than 30 million analytical values from, as you can see in the top right image here, 7 different databases, including PetDB. So here you see sample locations for which data exist in the EarthChem portal, colored by source database. So that is another way to access and visualize data within EarthChem and from external data sources. So now that we've discussed EarthChem systems more broadly, we'll hone in on the EarthChem library. The EarthChem library is EarthChem's data repository for archiving, publishing, and making accessible data and other digital content pertaining to geochemistry, geochronology, petrology, mineralogy, and more. And again, I will say that the scope of the content contributed to the EarthChem library has been growing quickly. The EarthChem library has interfaces for contributing data, which I will show you shortly, as well as interfaces for searching. As you see here, this is the EarthChem library search interface, as well as all of the sample locations for data that currently exist in the EarthChem library, and for browsing. Now, what are the benefits of submitting data to the EarthChem library. There are many. It's increasingly becoming a requirement of funding agencies and publishers to deposit your data in trusted, open access digital repositories, specifically where data are made fair. FAIR is an acronym that has become very popular lately. It stands for Findable, Accessible, Interoperable, and Reusable. And by depositing your data in the EarthChem library, you're doing just that. Now, what are the benefits that you might care a little bit more about? First, by submitting your data to the EarthChem library, you are complying with existing and emerging requirements of funding agencies and publishers. You can link data sets to funding awards. You can link data sets to related publications. You can cite, share, and get credit for your data by means of a digital object identifier that will be assigned to your data set. Another benefit you might like quite a lot is the ability to keep your data private for a period of up to 2 years, perhaps during which you plan on working on a manuscript. The ECL provides long-term archiving in collaboration with Columbia University Libraries, so this is also a great benefit. If you'd like to learn more about the Enabling Fair Data project, there's a URL on the bottom left. I encourage you to learn more about that as well. The first step in preparing your data sets for submission, let me just check really quickly if there are any questions. So I don't want to ignore that. Oops, sorry everybody. Nope, no questions. All right. The first step in preparing your data set for submission to the EarthChem library is to find an appropriate data template for your data type. There are a number of templates available on the EarthChem website, including blank templates and example templates. And you can see the URL here. It's www.earthchem.org/data/templates. These templates have been developed in close collaboration with investigators who work with those specific data types. If you do not find an appropriate template for your data type here, please do not despair. You can contact us at info@earthchem.org. You could help to develop a template for you and your data community to use, possibly starting from an existing template here and modifying it to include any relevant metadata that are important for your data type. And like I said earlier, we have been receiving an increasingly wide range of data types recently, so we've had to do this a fair amount, and it is not a problem to do so. In terms of data submission guidelines, there are a few that are the most important. The most important is that data sets should be documented with as much metadata as possible. This should include any relevant domain-specific metadata, including sample provenance, sample locations and descriptions, for example, and analytical data quality. What methods did you use? What laboratories were those methods performed in? What standards or reference materials did you also analyze? It is also good to strive for what I will call standalone reusability. In other words, it is best if other investigators can reuse your data without needing to go back to another publication or consulting you for a crucial piece of information. One incentive for documenting your dataset as well as possible is that in the future, we may rate or rank datasets based on metadata quality and completeness. We strongly recommend the use of data submission templates, as I just mentioned. If a template exists for your data type, you should use it. One additional strong recommendation is to register your physical samples in the System for Earth Sample Registration, or CSAR. You can find more information about CSAR at www.geosamples.org. CSAR is a sample registry for documenting your samples and for obtaining globally persistent and unique identifiers for them, called IGSNs. If you have questions about how to do so, you can contact me. There are also a number of YouTube tutorials on our YouTube channel. It's a pretty simple process that involves filling out a simple spreadsheet, and I'm happy to guide you through that. If you have additional questions about best practices for data submission, please consult the data submission guidelines, and I've given you the link there. All right, so without further ado, I will now do a live demo of what the EarthChem library submission templates look like and what it looks like to actually upload and submit your data. So I will hop out of the PowerPoint presentation and over to Excel. So here, this is an example of a bulk elemental bulk sample template that is actually an existing data set in the EarthChem library that you can download. Here you will see, hopefully you can see, it might be kind of small, is that there are 6 tabs in this file. The first tab is the data source tab. It has high-level information about the data set, the title, an abstract, who the authors are, some contact information, and then a list of any related publication citations. The second tab pertains to the samples. Here you will see that you are asked for a sample name, an IGSN, the unique identifier I was just talking about, important information including the latitude and longitude of where the samples were collected, elevation, some location keywords, a sample description, and there are many other fields to the right here that you can also choose to fill out. If the sample comes from a cruise, for example, it's important to include those kinds of IDs. And it is possible to leave some of these columns blank, but again, we're striving for as complete as possible here. Then we move along to the Data tab. The Data tab again asks you for your sample name, IGSN, what it actually was the material that you analyzed. You have the ability to include information about sample preparation or chemical treatments that you may have done, the number of replicates that you analyzed, and then over on the right here, you see we have the data. So this row 2, I guess it is, gives the analyte that you were interested in, and then a method code. And this is potentially the most confusing part about these templates. If you're confused about this at any time, you can always contact us, but this will become more clear when I actually move to the next tab. And then it's also very important to include units. So now if we go to the primary analytical metadata tab, you see this is where you define how you actually measured each parameter. What technique did you do? What instrument were you using? What laboratory did you complete it at? And then any information with respect to analytical accuracy and reproducibility that you are able to include. The method code is actually this first column over here. So you'll see that this person analyzed the first several elements by EMP. So that, right, microprobe analysis at the University of Hawaii. And then the second set of analyses were XRF, also at the University of Hawaii. So these are 2 different methods. So method code is 1 for the first set and 2 for the second set. And that's why when you go back to the data tab, for those samples analyzed by EMP at Hawaii, the method code is 1, and for those that were analyzed by X-ray fluorescence at Hawaii, the method code becomes 2. So you may submit a data set where you only have 1 method code, or you may submit a data set that has many different types of analyses, and you'll find yourself getting up to method code 7 or 8 or 9. Again, if you have any questions, please consult us at any time. The 5th tab is more method-specific metadata, and we get less of this, although we love if people will fill this out if it is relevant for you. And again, these are the types of metadata that may need to be altered to suit your data type. Tab number 6 is a list of vocabularies that you can use for parameters or methods. If you don't see a parameter here that you're interested in using, generally we recommend that you simply add it. Okay, let me check for questions one more time. Still no questions. All right, so now that you've seen the template, what I will say is that this is an example of one template that we have available on the templates website. In general, the first couple of templates, the data source and the samples tab, they do not vary by data type. It's more when you get to the data and the analytical metadata more that you see differences. So now I will go back and I will go to the EarthChem website and show you what it's like to actually submit. So here we are at the EarthChem library homepage, which is www.earthchem.org/library. And here you'll come and you want to click on Contribute. The first time you come here, if you've never accessed one of our systems before, you will be asked to create what's called a GeoPass account. This is just a set of credentials that you'll use to log in, both here to contribute data to the EarthChem library and also to register samples in CSAR. So you would click Don't have a GeoPass ID, sign up now. And you'll see it just asks you for your name, your email, and your affiliation. Once you fill this out, you will get an email, and in that email there'll be a link to click to finish your registration, and then you can come back here and log in. So I'm going to log in with my credentials. And here we are at the submission form. So you'll see it's a very rather short form with a number of questions. The very first question asks for, are there any related funding awards that you would like to associate with this data set? This is a relatively new feature. We recently implemented this where you can add multiple awards. You can also choose multiple funding sources if you have funding sources other than NSF. But you would just begin typing. So if you want to check if you've entered your award number correctly, you can, only for the NSF awards, you can click this validate button and it will come up with the name of the award, the funding agency, and a link to that award at NSF. So I was fortunate that I remembered an award just then. Had I entered an award that was not an actual award, then it would say, you know, this is not a valid award, and you can either contact us and send us the award number, or perhaps we'll help you look it up. All right, so let's go down here. So data title. We saw an example of this before. We want it to be as descriptive as possible. You know, mention the type of analyses that you did, maybe what geographic region. So I had, for John Sinton's case, he had major and trace element analyses of volcanic rocks from this ridge, Oahu, Hawaii. So something along those lines would be great. The languages should probably be English. I've never seen anyone click anything else. Dataset type. There are many different types, but the two you really want to focus on are dataset and collection. 95% of datasets that we receive are actually datasets. So if you need to see the definition of these terms, this actually comes from Dataset, which is the organization that we get our DOIs, the digital object identifiers, from. If you want to see what the definitions are, you can click here. Next, you want to select a lead author. There are a number of investigators in this list. This is based on investigators that have previously submitted data to the EarthChem library. If your name is not in this list, you simply click Add New Lead Author. So I'll add my name here. And you have to add your email address. So I will do that. Next, you can add co-authors. You simply add one, and then if you need to add another, you click the plus sign here. Next is the abstract. Now, there's a little bit of help text here that says to enter a 3 to 5 sentence description of the data set. Describe measurements, locations, and purpose of the data set. The more information you can give us here, the better. So don't skimp on this if you can. We prefer full sentences that talk about the samples, maybe any cruises if they came off of a cruise, the geographic features you were interested in looking at when you collected those samples, and anything else you find important. And this should be the same abstract, I should say. the title, the abstract, the authors, everything you enter here should be consistent with what's in the file that you actually upload in the end. Sometimes I find differences between the two, and they need to be harmonized. They should be the same. So let's just say I'm not going to write one. Next, there are a number of data types that we have available. This is simply check off as many as apply to your data type. It might just be one, it might be several. Next, you're encouraged to enter comma-separated non-geographic keywords. So, go to town with whatever you think is important for tagging your data set. Next, you can enter related publications. This is free text, so you can enter as many as you would like. Here, under Publication DOI, you can enter the DOI of the most relevant publication. This is something in the future we hope to be able to associate multiple DOIs with the data set, but for now, you should just choose the most relevant. And the way that you enter it is actually by prepending DOI : to the front of the DOI. Spatial coverage, you have a few options: global, regional, space, planetary, or other. Choose the most appropriate. And then geographic keywords. So this is where you can enter the geographic keywords as opposed to the subject keywords from before. And then at the bottom here, you see the last two steps are to upload your file. So let's find this file. All right, that one has a very long name. And then you can set a data file release date. And this date can be any time in the next 2 years. So once you're done, you'll see at the bottom here, there are a couple of different options. You can save progress at any time. I meant to mention this before. So if you're not ready to submit your file, maybe you don't have the final version of your file, or maybe you want to work on your abstract a little bit more, you can save progress at any time and continue to submission at a later point. So finally, the next step is to submit. And when you submit, you should get this successfully submitted message, and it'll have a little bit of a summary of what you entered. So are there any questions? I see no questions. All right, well, I will continue, but please stop me if you have anything at all. So now the next step for me will be to go back to my PowerPoint. Oh, I see a question. David Bailey is asking, why no data type for chemistry mineral? I believe, you know what, I will look into that and get back to you. I believe we should have a type for chemistry mineral.
Absolutely. I think the reason is that we so far have not received mineral chemistry. No, we do.
We have a lot of mineral chemistry, yeah. I will look into that. Yeah. I think that is actually a vocabulary that we were looking into augmenting very soon, since we've had so many different data types recently. So it's pretty high on our list. All right, so what to expect after submission. You have received this success message and you're wondering, when am I going to get my DOI? So what happens is the minute that you submit, I receive an email that says somebody has submitted to the EarthChem library, please take a look. I will review your submission, including the metadata that you submitted and the contents of the file, and I will get back to you to say we have received your submission. At that time, I will tell you either that your data set has been approved for publication in the EarthChem library, or that there are some additional metadata that we need from you. Usually this will involve a few changes to the submitted spreadsheet, nothing major. As soon as you send that back to me, I will, usually within a few days, send a digital object identifier back to you. Now, we recognize that there are cases where people are very urgently in need of a DOI. We can work with you if you need it very quickly. But we really want to make sure that the data are well documented, that they're in final form, and that they're really ready to be put out there before we assign those DOIs. So we, like I said, we're willing to work with you. Now, to be clear, what happens when the data are published in the ECL is that the dataset landing page will be visible. So this is the dataset landing page for the Sinton dataset that I had showed you the data file for before. And you see it looks a lot like the submission form. It has all the information that we entered, including links to the funding awards and a place to download the data. Now, if you submit a data set and say, I don't want my data to be public for 2 years, this landing page will still exist and be viewable, but the download file option will not be there. It will simply say, this data set will be downloadable in the future. Okay, so next. Okay, one very important thing to know how to do is how to cite the data. We have lots of people putting data in, but not always knowing how to, the best possible way to cite it in their own publications or how to encourage others to cite the data. This is also an excellent way to share the data using the full citation. So this is the official recommendation from Dataset on how to cite your data. You want to do authors, publication year, title, publisher. In this case, it's the Interdisciplinary Earth Data Alliance. Again, that's the parent data facility of EarthChem. And then the DOI, as well as a date of access. So I hope that's helpful. There are a number of help resources for submitting data to the EarthChem library. You can find them on the EarthChem website. Like I mentioned, there are YouTube tutorials for submission to the ECL, as well as for registration of samples in the system for Earth sample registration. We hope to update these very soon. I even hope to take this webinar and turn it into a YouTube tutorial so that people have as much guidance as possible. But sometimes, the easiest thing and the fastest way to get an answer is to contact us. So don't be afraid to write to us at info@earthchem.org. And that's actually it. So does anybody have any questions? Additional questions? Oh, I see one. Let's see. If you submit a data set and collect additional data from the same location at a later date, can you update a submitted data set? That's an excellent question. So once a data set is published with a DOI, we do not make changes to the actual data set. What we would do, that's because somebody may access the data set and cite it, and they cited the original version of the data set before you made changes to it. So if you want to add additional data or make a change, what we actually would do is make that a new publication in the EarthChem library, a new version of the publication, and it would get a new DOI, but we can link that new version to the old version so that when you go to the old version, it will tell you, actually, there's a new version of this data set available. Would you like to see it? Okay, next question. Is the recommended citation format available on the dataset landing page? Yes, it is. So if you go back, I know it's very small to see here, but if you see the citation block on the landing page, it's actually exactly the way you should cite the data set. It also, we made sure recently, so if somebody goes to the EarthChem library and downloads a data set, there's a little pop-up before they actually get the data set that explains to them, what they're downloading, and it gives the recommended citation format in there as well with the current date, so you can literally copy and paste it from there as well. Next question. Can we change the publication date after submission? If the data set has already been made available, then no, we can't, make it private again. But if the release date is still in the future, we do have some leeway. We can actually change it. We try not to allow data sets to be embargoed for longer than 2 years. This is very much in line with funding agency requirements and all, but we do have some flexibility with respect to the date, but only if the data set has not yet been made available, downloadable. Great questions, guys. Any more? All right. I'll wait 30 more seconds just because it takes time to type your question, and I don't see any hands raised. So I don't think there's anybody urgently waiting to ask.
Definitely contact us if you need to. We're also going to be present at the upcoming Goldschmidt conference. So if you want to meet with one of us, with either Megan or me, we can set up an appointment to help you with your data submission or with any other questions. That is absolutely possible. We will be running a workshop, but I think the workshop is full, right?
It's on Sunday.
Sorry. So.
And we do also make appearances at several other workshops or several other conferences if you do want to meet in person. We're also physically located at the Lamont Doherty Earth Observatory of Columbia University if you ever want to stop by. All right. Well, thank you everyone very much for joining us. Oh wait, one more comment, just a thank you. Okay, thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to talking to you and receiving your submissions in the EarthChem library.
Thanks everybody, and have a great day.